Hello everyone and welcome back to the JP on Comms YouTube channel for another potential signings video. This time we're going to be taking a look at some key forward players that Maidstone United may want to consider going into the National League South ahead of the 2023-24 campaign. Now, of course, following relegation from the National League in this season, Maidstone will of course undergo a big redevelopment. We have heard murmurings from within the club that of course there will be a big transitional period under George Edakobi. We are seeing some very key players, some of the more older players in this squad being slowly ushered out. Juan Luque, of course, one. Joe Lol a little bit earlier on in the season. Very, very key players for Maidstone in the past 18 months or so, and it does seem that these players are now being ushered out in favour of a more youthful approach to football. Now, of course, in this video, we're going to be taking a look at, as I say, some key forward signings, people who I believe may be able to fill a role that we have been lacking in throughout a good portion of this season, especially since Jack Barham departed for Aldershot. Now, we will be taking a look at a couple of players who I believe may be able to suit this Maidstone team, may be able to suit George Edakobi's approach to football going forward into the National League South next season. And for me, we are going to be taking a look at players that I think could prove quite important to this Maidstone side. Will offer us a couple of different options. Not all of these players are going to be the same. We are going to be looking at a couple of different options that may be able to offer us different things. Now, looking at Maidstone's current situation in the forward line, of course, we do have some very talented players. Nigel Smith, Josh Shonny Barre are probably going to be the two players that we do have on the wings next season, much younger than their counterparts Rory Deacon and Mark Marshall. Of course, there are a couple other players in there as well who we may see feature for us next season. Nathan Jeke is someone who I'm really looking forward to seeing next season, but for me, that central striker role is somewhere where we are currently lacking, of course, with the only permanent signing at the club in that forward role being James Alabi, someone who's found himself out of favour with the new manager for whatever reason. That does leave us with Ryan Viggers, a young loanee up front, majority of the time on his own if he does find himself in the starting lineup. So, of course, it's now time to take a look at some potential signings I feel Maidstone could have a look at going into next season. The first of which is going to be this man right here, Jordan Greenwich. Jordan Greenwich, of course, may be a familiar name to some of you, especially that family name as well. Greenwich, of course, we do have one of them ourselves, and it just so happens that he is the brother of Jordan. Reece Greenwich, of course, our centre-back, currently injured, hopefully going to be staying with us for next season following recovery from his injury. But his brother Jordan, of course, is someone who's succeeded pretty well in the National South this season. At 23 years of age, Jordan Greenwich is a very young striker, still learning his trade, but still applying himself in the majority of games he does feature in. 34 games in the National South this season, he's bagged himself 16 goals, and he has played for a couple of clubs in the National South this season. Currently operating at Jay Saunders' Tunbridge Angels, where he has picked up 13 goals in 22 games, which is very, very impressive indeed. He is actually on loan from Hemel Hempstead, which for me is a bit of a strange situation. Hemel, Tunbridge, both relatively competitive in that kind of mid-table region of the National South, and it does bewilder me a little bit as to why Greenwich is out on loan from Hemel at Tunbridge and they haven't maybe called him back. They did actually manage to extend his loan a couple of months ago as well, so maybe there's a bit of a falling out between Greenwich and Hemel there, I'm not too sure, but he has scored 3 goals in 12 appearances for them this season. So what is it about Jordan Greenwich that I in particular feel may be able to contribute to this team? Well, he's 6'4" tall. He definitely takes after his brother in that capacity. He's a very, very big player, someone who will offer us something that we don't actually have in the squad at the moment, that big man up front. Tallest player, of course, we've got in our forward line is probably Nigel Smith, about 6'1"-ish, and of course he does predominantly play off that left-hand side. So in that striking role, I believe James Alabi is probably in that 5'10", 5'11" region. Ryan Viggers a little bit taller than that, 5'11", 6 foot. So having that player 6'4", that target man striker, of course, is going to offer us something completely different to what we've seen at Maidstone in recent years. I can't remember the last time we had a striker like that at the club, so it'll be definitely interesting to see what he could offer to us. In the videos that I've been watching and looking over some clips and highlights of Jordan Greenwich in the National South this season, he does have a lot to offer. Now, he's not, of course, going to be the fastest player at 6'4", but off the ball, he does have some legs on him. He can beat players to a ball. At times when he's actually picked up the ball, when he is on it, he can be a little bit clunkier, but I do believe that is just because of his size. He's 6'4", but he's massive 6'4". I mean, he is one of the biggest players I've ever seen on a football pitch, and he's very, very built. He's not your Peter Crouch type of tall player. He's very, very broad, but he uses that to the best of his ability. His hold-up play is fantastic. Of course, as you will know, National League, National South do not record their assisting stats, much to my depression, but he does seem to be involved quite heavily in the surrounding build-up play in a lot of Tunbridge's goals at times throughout this season. Having picked up 16 goals himself, of course, contributing a lot on that front, but like I say, pinging a ball into him, when you've got players like maybe Josh Johnny Barre, Sol Wanjao Smith running off him, when he can hold that ball up, allow them to make that run on and find them in behind, that could be really, really useful for us next season. Of course, as well, using his size and stature, he's great in the air. He really is good in the air, wins a lot of his headers, and of course, we've seen that with his brother as well. Must be in the gene pool. And of course, as I said, he's got quite a lot of goals in the National South this season, playing for two different teams, two teams which aren't the best teams in the league as well. He still picked himself up 16 goals in a very competitive league. His finishing ability is, of course, very good as well, and that's something we have lacked at times. I mean, Ryan Viggers is someone I'm going to come onto in this video a little bit more in depth. In the 4 or 5, maybe even 6 appearances he's made for Maidstone this season, has yet to score a goal, but does find himself in those good areas. Greenwich, I think he's a little bit more clinical. He's someone who does seem to take his chances quite well, and of course, as I say, will offer us something a little bit different. Looking at his youth career, he started off in the Stoke under-18s and in the Premier League too, and in those under-18-19 ranks, he was very, very profitable up front. 25 goals and 8 assists in 44 games for the Stoke Academy side. So someone who is certainly able to find the back of the net. Even at 23 years of age, he's got experience abroad as well, has played for a club in Greece, has played in the Spanish second division as well. So he's someone who, for me at least, has got a bit about him. He's going to offer us something different that we do not necessarily have, and I think that taking a punt on a player like this could prove quite beneficial for Maidstone in the long run. Of course, he's going to have that link with his brother if he does come to the Gallagher. He's also, something I do want to raise here, very familiar with 3G surfaces. Tunbridge Angels, of course, do have their home ground with an artificial pitch. That's very good for us. Of course, we saw with the likes of Sol Wanjao Smith, someone who's transitioned from that grass playing surface to that artificial playing surface, has suffered quite badly with that transition. Jordan Greenwich, very familiar with playing on that 3G surface, would not be too difficult with transition, I imagine. So he's the first player that I'd like to highlight as a potential target for Maidstone United. The next player I'm going to be taking a look at is another forward, of course, as the nature of this video suggests, but this time we're going to be looking at Michael Gyasi. Now, Michael Gyasi is another 23-year-old player. He's of Ghanaian and German descent. He predominantly features off that left-hand side, but can also play up front, very similar to Sol Wanjao Smith. Now, for me, Michael Gyasi, of course, would come into this side and predominantly play on the left. Now, you may be thinking, Joe, why would you want to kick Sol Wanjao Smith out of this team? He's contracted to us next season. It's very likely we'll have him in this side next year. Well, I think he could offer us something different. Of course, Michael Gyasi on the left would then displace Sol. I believe we could see Sol maybe featuring up front in a forward position, maybe in a forward 2 if we were to sign someone like Jordan Greenwich as well. Now, of course, it's very good to have different options. Mark Marshall seemingly kept out of the side by George Elokobi quite regularly. A very much ageing player in his mid-30s now, not exactly fitting the philosophy that Elokobi's trying to implement in this side, so it wouldn't surprise me to see him move on, although I do think he'd be pretty good in the South next season. So, like I say, Michael Gyasi, what is it that I believe he could offer to Maidstone? Well, like I say, he does play in similar positions to what we already have. However, it's always nice to have someone who can do something more. And I believe that, taking a look at Gyasi's style of play, he's very, very quick indeed, very, very direct, and offers something that Sol does as well. But if we could have more than one of those players in the team, that's obviously going to benefit us going forward, of course, literally on the pitch and as a developmental side in the South next season. So he has got a good bit of pedigree behind him, has got a few good clubs under his belt, has played for Chesterfield, of course, the parent club in which he's on loan at Gloucester City from right now, but has also played at Dover, was pretty successful there with them, and did manage to bag a hat-trick in, I believe, a 6-5 game against Wrexham. It was the end of the season, I think, last year. He did score a hat-trick for Dover in that one, but the reason he did that is because of his style of play. Very, very quick, very direct, loves that ball over the top in behind, and he's really not afraid to take players on. I've somewhat likened him to Luis Diaz. If you're familiar with the Premier League and Liverpool, Luis Diaz is someone that came to mind when I was watching Michael Gyasi play. Now, if you've watched Luis Diaz, you'll know that his end product is not always there. He's not the guy that's always scoring and assisting every goal that goes in. But what he does offer to a team is danger. He offers a different thought process for defences. You see Michael Gyasi on the ball, he's not afraid to run at a crowd of 2 or 3 players, and most of the time he's going to come out of that group of players with the ball still at his feet. And for me, when you've got someone with that ability in the side, that's going to offer so much danger. They're going to have to try and double up on him, even triple up on him, and that doesn't guarantee that you're going to get the ball off him either. And that, of course, is going to open up other players in the team with good movement, like Solwan Joe Smith, like Josh Shonny Barre. So, of course, having a player like that will benefit us going forward. He does like to make those driving runs. He does like to cut in onto his right foot from that left-hand side as well, drive in towards the middle and either find a pass or have a shot too. Now, I really like that about him, but that's not all he has to offer. He does also possess quite good hold-up play. Now, again, it's very much Liverpool-orientated analysis here, but Roberto Firmino, another player who is not always known for his goals and assists, but his build-up play, his influence on games is so important to Liverpool sides of the past that I think we see some similarities in Michael Gyasi. I think the way he does manage to hold up the ball, he's very strong in what he does on the ball as well. And his pace and ability to remain quite low to the ground when trying to beat a player does allow him to hold on to the ball a lot better, bring other players into the game, and I think that would be a very good addition to this Maidstone side indeed. Now, of course, it's a little bit of a trek from Gloucester and from Chesterfield to Maidstone, but of course, having played for Dover in the past, he's going to be familiar with the area, the southeast region of the country. That could, of course, allow him to maybe be a little bit more open up to moving back down here. So he's someone I'd certainly consider going forward for this Maidstone side. And of course, another option going forward. Now, the third player I want to take a look at is someone who I'm very interested in indeed, Clyde Lollos. Now, that's going to be a name that many people don't recognise. If you are familiar with the National League South this season, you will know that Oxford City do find themselves near the top of the table in 3rd position. A very, very good team indeed this season, only falling short of Dartford and Ebbsfleet in that league. Now, they possess very many good players who will be featuring in more potential signings videos, but the one I'm picking for this one in particular is Clyde Lollos. Now, who is Clyde Lollos? Well, he's a striker, almost a second striker really. He does like to play up front with a partner at times as well in this Oxford City side, and he is 22 years of age as well. Now, as you see, there's a bit of a theme going on here with the younger players. We've got Gyasi, Greenwich, both 23, Lollos 22. Now, as a striker for this side, he has picked himself up 16 goals in 31 games in the National League South this season. He is someone who is very good with both feet, predominantly a right-footed player, but has also picked up goals and assists with his left foot. He's a very, very tall player as well, 6'2", but you wouldn't be able to tell from the style of play that he implements. He's a very technical player, someone who I think does have a lot to offer a team in terms of his technical ability and his size. It's very rare to see someone who's as good as he is with his feet, who's also able to use their body in the way that he is. A lot of times in the clips I was watching, you see him with his back to goal, back to a defender. He's able to rotate and pivot on that defender to beat them, get a shot off, lay a ball off, you name it, he's got it. I think he's a really, really impressive player of Greek and Albanian heritage, which, of course, isn't really going to make much of a difference, but it's always nice to have people with different backgrounds, different experiences in a side. And I think, of course, with his background, he does have a good pedigree as well. He's featured for Crystal Palace under-18s. Of course, as everybody will know, Crystal Palace have a fantastic academy in the south of London, so he's someone, of course, who's going to have that experience growing up. Moved to Argyle under-18s and did have a few loans around that sort of West Country region, Dorchester, Chippenham, Torquay, all places he's played before moving to Oxford City. But it is, of course, at Oxford where he has really hit the ground running. He's been a fantastic player. I mean, 16 goals and in 31 games. I mean, that's really good for someone as young as he is. And it's worth mentioning as well that he comes off the bench quite a lot of the time. They did win a game yesterday, 5-1 at the time of recording. I'm recording this on Sunday the 16th, I do believe. And yesterday, Saturday the 15th, he came off the bench, I believe, in the 75th minute, scored 2 goals before the end of the game. So he's someone who, he doesn't even have to be in the game to be scoring. I mean, coming off the bench and getting 2 goals to round a game off 5-1, that's really, really good. It doesn't take him a lot of time to get involved in games, have a significant impact and influence on these fixtures. So that's something we've lacked, I believe. A big game player, someone who can really influence games at times in that forward line, is something we've lacked throughout this season. Of course, we've seen it in sparks, but we're looking for that consistency, and I think he's got that. As I say, very technical in his ability, very good at laying the ball off. His little flicks, his little passes, his little turns on the ball are all very useful in opening up space and beating defenders, especially down in the south as well. He can shoot from range too. That is another thing that I did notice from some of the clips that I watched. Scored a fantastic goal in the National South this season from a very, very long way out, about 35 yards, right in the top corner. And that's not the first time he's backed himself from that range as well. So it's good that he offers a couple of different approaches there. He's someone who can also score a penalty, which, as much as I love Jack Barham, he was not the best at. And, we did lose out on that a few times this season. Of course, Regan Booty did step up. But it's nice to have someone in that forward line. And, I mean, let's face it, Regan Booty's probably going to be leaving this summer too. So having someone who can take a penalty, come into the side, is going to be very useful for Maidstone. Now, this is a player in particular I really do like the look of. Someone who I think we do very well to attain. Of course, going to be a little bit more difficult to convince him to move all the way to Maidstone from that west side of the country, but we managed to convince Sol Joe Smith to do it for 2 years, so you never know. Very similar age to Sol, very similar profile in terms of his impact in games, and coming from that region as well, obviously played there for quite a long time now for a few different clubs. It's someone that I really like the look of. I think we could benefit from bringing him into this side. Now, the last player I'm going to be talking about in this video is someone that, if you are a Maidstone United fan, you should be very familiar with. Of course, Ryan Viggers, someone I mentioned earlier on in this video as being the only real striking option we have that seems to be in George Edekobi's favour at the moment. Ryan Viggers is currently 19 years of age at the time of recording. However, by the time you see this, he's probably 20. This is being recorded the day before his birthday, the 17th of April, in which he will turn 20 years of age. So happy birthday to Ryan, of course. But let's take a look at his profile. What is it that he can offer this Maidstone side? Well, for me, he does offer a little bit different things to what I've kind of highlighted with other players in this video. You've got Gyasi, who is that really quick, direct player who's going to be taking players on. You've got Lollos, who's a much more flair player, technical, and of course using his size and stature to benefit his game. Then you've got Jordan Greenwich, who's that out-and-out target man centre forward. He's a fox in the box, Ryan Vickers. He is the fourth option that I'm putting forward in this video. A little bit different to all the rest of them. Now for me, of course, I do think he is very similar to that of Jack Barham. Of course, once Jack Barham departed, he lost that number 10 shirt. Ryan Vickers came in, picked that up straight away. Now, whether that was just a coincidence or whether that was sort of an idea that we're looking to try and retain this player going forward, of course, number 10 shirts at many clubs do hold a lot of value. And Vickers is someone for me who does implement a very similar style of play to Jack Barham. You know, at a very young age, he's very tenacious. He's very much a high pressure player, someone who, if you watch games very regularly, I've looked back over some clips from his time at Needham Market as well, scored a brace in a game there during his 1 month loan earlier on this season. And I'm very impressed by what he does off the ball. I think that is what really opened up Jack Barham to so many of us as well. You know, this fox in the box, this terrier who's never going to stop running. I mean, Jack Barham must clock more miles per game than anybody else in this Maidstone side, and I think Vickers is very similar in that aspect. I think that's probably why we look to bring someone like him in. A little bit younger than Jack Barham, of course. Jack Barham in his mid to kind of late 20s now. Ryan Vickers in his very, very late teens, of course. And I think that having someone like Ryan Vickers come in next season would be a very good asset to Maidstone. Of course, we saw how beneficial it was to have someone of that playing style in the south with Jack Barham last season, and I think it's going to take a little while for Vickers to maybe find his feet in the division playing full-time men's football. You know, it is hard for younger players, and he's still of course going to be finding his feet, but he's very aggressive, he loves to run the channel, and he has got a bit of pedigree behind him at such a young age as well. He's represented the Welsh under 15s, 16s, 17s, 18s and under 19s as well, scoring goals throughout. So he is someone who I think could be a good player to bring in for next season. I don't think we should rest all our hopes on him as a sole striker, but I think if we were to bring in the likes of Jordan Greenwich next season, then of course having someone with a different style of play, a different approach, allowing us to switch things up when the time does come a calling, it would be good to have someone like Ryan Vickers, a little bit younger, still developing his game, a lot to learn in football. But of course we've got people who may be able to teach him that, of course Craig Fagan, George Elokobi, both very recent in their careers playing football. You know, it's not been too long since they were out of the game. George, of course, only a matter of months really, and Fagan only a few years behind that as well. So for me, Ryan Vickers is certainly worth a punt bringing into the side next season. Like I say, I don't believe we should rest everything on him next season, but I think he'd be a great understudy to some of the other players I mentioned in this video. So those are going to be 4 potential signings for Maidstone United ahead of the National South campaign next season. Today we've taken a look predominantly at the forward line players, specifically that more number 9 role. Of course, Gyasi, someone who can feature in a couple of different positions, of course, but you know, it's nice to see someone who's got a different option to what we currently have at the moment. I think that these 4 players would be great targets for Maidstone, and I'll be very happy to see any of them coming into this side. So if you did enjoy this video, you do want to see a few more potential signing videos, of course, then do leave your comments down below. Do subscribe to the channel and do like this video in particular. I really appreciate the support I've had in the past on these potential signings videos. They take an incredible amount of work to put together. So of course, if you've got any players as well that you want to highlight that might be worth us taking a look at for next season, do leave them down below as well. Do share this video about. I really enjoy your support on these videos. So thank you so much for watching this video, and I'll catch you all in the next one.